Class is in session, everyone gather around. We need to talk about your creativity and the body. I just got back from a wellness retreat in the jungles of Mexico, and I swear to God, I came out of it feeling like I could use the actual force. If I really tried, I could see through walls. And I want to tell you everything that I've learned. If you're new to my platform, my name is Vanessa. I am an opera singer and a writer. I'm also a creativity consultant. I'm not doing my own creativity. I serve as this kind of renegade adjunct professor in this online school for creatives. I'm a mix of David Goggins meets Rick Rubin meets Joan of Arc. If you're not new here, you've heard me say the following, that God is the creator in every tradition, and you are creative. Why do I always yell that at my students or my clients? Because you've missed the point. What's my point? That creativity is spiritual in its essence. If every spiritual tradition is getting us to see our godliness, to become supernatural, to understand our supernatural nature, if you have not done the math on the fact that God is the creator and you are creative, you're missing out on a lot. That means that all of that spiritual advice written in these ancient texts and the cave paintings in the holy book is not only just about your spiritual process, it's also about your creative process. That your creativity is your godliness. That your creativity is an umbilical back to the source of the universe, to the architect of the cosmos, to God the Father. I always say this, but go back and read the Upanishad, the Yoga Sutras, the Tao Te Ching, the Gospels, etc. Read those books with a creative question in mind. If you haven't already done that and discovered that in your life, you would fall on your face to discover how well the spiritual advice, the spiritual pursuits map so beautifully onto creativity. One of my objectives is to give creative people more tools for staying engaged in art for a lifetime. Spirituality, like creativity, is a sprint to the end. Said candidly, I am tired of seeing the greatest creative minds in my generation squander their talent, get stuck, get paralyzed by shame and guilt because of some label, some sense of a defect that was given to them by the self-help industrial complex. Fear of being seen, fear of being perceived, limerence, attachment styles. These things are real and true, but they are not true enough that we need to defer to them above our true nature. We've lost our nature. Our true nature is spelled out in the oldest and most durable spiritual texts, the texts and sources that have sustained the elders, the great shamans, the things that are listed on the cave paintings, the things that our ancestors remind us of in our dreams, etc. Self-help industrial complex will have you pursuing your life as if you are broken, and in fact all of the spiritual texts say the opposite, that you are perfectly and intelligently made and lovingly made, for which there is unconditional love available. Thinking that there's something wrong with you because you're grieving, because you're heartbroken. Everyone talks about a fear of being seen, for example, but back in my day we used to call that vulnerability. Somebody told you that you had a fear of being seen because you heard that on the internet and you believed them, but that is not a real thing. It's a truism on the internet. But the problem is that so many people think that that sense of vulnerability, that sense of being seen is bad. The objective of spiritual teaching, of spiritual counsel, spiritual direction is to remind people what are the raw materials, the bare bones of their spiritual journey. And so what are the raw materials, if you ask me, according to my survey of all these sources, what are the raw materials of being an artist and being engaged in art? 1, that your talent is whatever thing makes you feel like you have God in your bones. 2, that your purpose is to build a life around where you feel God in your life. 3, your work is to apply courage to pursuing your purpose and to using your talent. This is what human beings call art. That art is a technology of making God and his unconditional love accessible to other people. Someone who does that is an artist. As is referenced in all the spiritual texts counsel us on the big category things of having fears, having doubts, needing to be vulnerable, needing to apply courage, needing to be in the heart, needing to settle the mind and settle the ego, etc. Needing to have faith, needing illumination, needing inspiration, needing breath. One of the other major through lines in all of the spiritual traditions is the importance of the body within the spiritual practice. The body is a linchpin in your spiritual success. That the body is designed to facilitate our spirituality as much as the body is designed to facilitate our materiality. So this new series, Body of Work, is going to be a survey of art, culture, world, religion, philosophy, mysticism, everything about the wisdom of the body of work. And the body is a technology of getting you to realize and experience that unconditional love. So my general thesis again is that creativity and spirituality are the same thing. That the purpose of life is to get us to discover our godliness, our supernatural nature in human form. And if God is the creator, the purpose of life is to be creative. And that we should consider our creative process a spiritual process, and therefore we should lend our bodies to this creative and spiritual process. And something that you'll hear me, and something I'll say a lot in this series is that creativity is not chased or pursued. Creativity is hosted by the body. God is hosted in the body. So like I said, I went on a week-long retreat in the jungles of Mexico. I've been surveying and studying body wisdom from the ancient traditions, from the religious traditions, from the old warrior traditions, for example, and trying to build a protocol for myself and ultimately to share with my community. Because again, I think that if it's written on the cave paintings, if it's in the Bhagavad Gita, if it's 5,000 years old, if it's durable, we need to hold on to it. And we're losing the sacred text, guys. That's a different video for another time. I went to this retreat with two intentions. I wanted to focus and apply some of these protocols that I've been studying, and so I wanted to find someone and find a retreat host and a practitioner that was deeply aligned, and by God's grace, I did. I begged her to let me enroll last minute. I know people in retreats usually sign up a year in advance. I signed up 2 days before I got on a flight. My other intention was to heal myself. I have a lot to be proud of in my creativity, a lot that I love everything that I do. I love my clients. I love everything that I've built. I'm very proud of myself, very fortunate to be a full-time creative. I used to work in finance, work in a corporate job. I loved my corporate job, but then it became time to pivot. And that was about 2 years ago. And now 2 years later, I started to feel that it was time for me to pivot again. Time to do more, call in more, be more courageous, do things that I don't know how to do. If we are to be obedient to our creativity as if it comes from God, being a mature artist, approaching your art like an adult means developing the skill of pivoting, of grieving what has become familiar, comfortable, profitable, having the discernment to understand what feels safe but is really attached to the ego, having the courage to surrender into the unknown on behalf of your audience. Because again, more potency, more resonance, deeper expression, more truth, more honesty, etc. is not for you, it's for your audience. Art is here to save people's souls. Again, art is a technology of making God and his unconditional love accessible to other people. And if you feel that you need to pivot, that you need to change, that you need to go harder in the paint, that you need to change directions, you have to do it. And all of these changes happen at a timing that God decides, that the universe decides. And so you have to learn as a mature artist how to pivot and how to be obedient. And I was feeling that. But the reality is that I was feeling stuck. I felt all these new ideas, but I couldn't quite actualize on them. I'm repeating the same habits in my creativity, producing the same unsatisfying results. Looking back on it, I can honestly say that my creative process, and this is very important for this video about the body, that my creative process had become slavish to an idea about creativity that I want to tackle in this video, in this series. That so many of us are conditioned into thinking that creativity and good artistry is about chasing the vibe. But again, creativity is not chased, it's hosted. I believe that this confusion, this distortion in how we pursue creativity these days leads to a lot of burnout. And what my creative process has been in the last 2 years, trying to keep up with TikTok, trying to keep up with the excitement, trying to keep up with my clients who I love dearly, that I was kind of strung out because I'm pursuing these big, exciting bursts of energy and I'm working myself tirelessly because I think that that's what I've earned. I'm an artist who's now financially independent in art, which is a grace that I can barely begin to contain. It's frantic, being inspired, but then exhausting myself until it's done. And then what happens? I crash. I feel exhausted, depleted, frozen. And then the cycle repeats where I get nothing done. I can't quite chip away at the new idea. And then my progress stagnates. And deep down, resting in me is, again, I understand that I need to be obedient, but somehow I can't get it done. And I recognize now that it's this pattern of chasing creativity, of indulging in the highs of this kind of impulsive creative output. I didn't recognize this until my body started to scream at me. For example, my diaphragm is frozen. I'm an opera singer, and the diaphragm and the psoas and the abdomen is basically your moneymaker. My jaw is tight. My skin is erupting. Shoulders are tense. Sleep schedule destroyed. Hormones all over the place. Mood all over the place, which is hard to detect if you love what you do. And if you love what you do, but you're feeling all the discomfort and you're not getting things done, what I was doing was pushing myself endlessly. What I identified, because my body was giving me this feedback, is that I was guilty of this thing that I yell at my students and my clients about. Feeling terrible, but pushing myself anyway is still seated in this idea that I am broken, that there's something wrong with me, and so I have to fix and push and force it. Said another way, that I started to discover that I lacked a deeper type of embodiment of how my body is meant to support creativity. That this desire to chase it and do it and finish it and rush it and be excited constantly is actually more fear-based and betrays. My body is designed to support the idea that I am unconditionally loved, that I don't have to chase, crash, get up, be exhausted. I know that that's something that we know when we're talking about dealing in the corporate world and dealing with stress and trauma. It's something that I don't think we talk about enough in creativity. Something that I've learned that I want to share with you is that I, deep down, was pushing myself past burnout because I believed deep down there's a belief that I was broken, but that's not the issue. The issue is that I had abandoned my body and I had failed to incorporate my body's inherent wisdom in supporting the creative process. In all of the spiritual traditions, like I said before, the body is the facilitator of spirituality. In the Christian tradition, it says that God became flesh. The body is a God-designed technology of turning the invisible visible. Incarnation. Christian tradition also refers to the body as a temple. If we think about what a temple is, a temple, a cathedral, for example, these are not just locations to go to have church. That cathedrals, temples are intentionally designed to facilitate the indwelling of a higher force. Every square inch of a cathedral has some function for a spiritual need. It's one thing to tend to your body with a physique goal, to pursue vanity. It's another thing to tend to your body to be healthy, to be strong, to heal. My point, what the spiritual traditions are trying to tell us, I believe, is that it is yet another thing to lend your body towards the endeavor of creativity. A creativity that is understood by you to be spiritual. Stronger than the body's capacity to make you look good in a bikini. Stronger than your body's capacity to heal. Your body understands more than anything your creative pursuit. Lending your body to your creative pursuit is going to fix everything, that it's at the top of the food chain. Because why? Because God is the creator. We are creative. All of the spiritual traditions incorporate some aspect of disciplining the body. Why? Because your body sucks and because you need to be skinny and because you need to be boring? No. Discipline the body so that you can be properly creative, so that you can be properly spiritual, so that you can be properly godly. This isn't a punishment or a curse. It's thrilling. It's God's greatest gift. So the question is, how do we tend to our bodies to host our creative work? And I set out to find a retreat and a practitioner that could help me answer this question and help me solve some of it myself. And I want to share with you what I found. So the theme of the retreat was called Journey into the Heart. It was hosted at a retreat center in Jalisco, Mexico, at the Modalities retreat center in Jalisco, Mexico. It's absolutely beautiful. The retreat was led by a genius practitioner, a Jedi samurai named Lila Heller. She has been doing body work for more than 20 years. You name the modality, she's mastered it. She has more certifications than she has time to name them. But we are aligned on things like Pilates, classical Pilates, fascia, breath work, nervous system stuff. And she also, of course, threw at me a bunch of things that I've never heard of. Her capacity to blend all of these things together that she's amassed in her 20 plus years of practice is miraculous. The first thing to note that my body seemed to really appreciate was the space itself, the retreat center itself. It was not one of these Instagrammable wellness boutique, viral appearing type of retreat centers. It was absolutely stunning, absolutely beautiful, every detail considered, but there was something honest about it. I'm personally convinced that this place is the greatest wellness retreat center ever because of the care, because of the detail, because of the beauty, because of the setting, etc., because of the warmth and the heart-centeredness of all of the staff at this retreat center. But my body seemed to really appreciate me unplugging and starving myself of my very real desire to do the chic, Instagrammable, contentable type of retreat center. Things that fit the mold in terms of content, etc. You know the vibe that I'm talking about. My point is that my body and therefore my creativity seemed to benefit immediately by returning to this kind of non-internet aesthetic of beauty, of wellness. That my body was returning to something, remembering something primal, primordial. As soon as I put my body in that landscape, despite the jet lag and the travel and dealing with the cartel and all of that stuff, despite all of that, my body immediately started to heal when I gave it something honest to absorb. So the vibe of the facilities was kind of like luxury convent on a jungle farm by the beach, if you can put all that together in your head. It had everything that you could possibly need. It had a gym, sauna, multiple pools, cold plunge, jacuzzi, massage, acupuncture. It was nestled into a farm. We had 3 buffet-style farm-to-table meals. The food was delicious. I gained 5 honest pounds in a week. I want to talk about that later. There were 5 or 6 retreats going on at the same time at this retreat center, and the staff went out of their way to learn every one of the names of the 200 participants that week, and it made a huge difference. It's not the vibe of when you book a first class ticket, when you travel business class, that they remember your name. It's something. It's as if the staff understood that if I know this person's name, this person is going to start healing right away. It made me sad to think about how many places do I put my body inside of, how many environments do I travel into where my body doesn't hear my name, where people don't know who I am. My body has been existing in that, especially as a New Yorker, for a very long time. But what shocks me is how much my creativity benefited from that. Beyond the backdrop of the retreat center itself, Lila's philosophy and her endeavor was one, of course, to get us into our hearts, to go deeply into the body and find the easiest way to open the body's wisdom. So what were the movement and body modalities that she taught us? And what was the pacing of it? Because I think that that matters a lot. 1, breath work. For the week-long retreat, we had 6 working days, maybe 4 total hours of movement a day. The rest of it was eating, tanning, massage, sleeping, etc. The first component was breath work. We started every session. There were 2 sessions a day. We started every session with breath work. And it wasn't complicated. It wasn't rigorous. It wasn't complex, sophisticated, intense breath work. Nothing that requires years of study. Her approach is, what is the smallest possible gesture that a person can make to turn on the body's wisdom? Everyone knows that the breath is the gateway to the parasympathetic nervous system, to relaxation, to the rest and digest, but that most of us are used to a survival type of breathing. What I would add to that is that most creatives, because again, that we are taught to pursue our creativity in this frantic, fear-based way, even when we're engaged in our creativity, we're still not accessing the proper breath. That Lila's main point with the breath work is that we are not breathing deeply enough to get the full benefit. And so she started us off with 2, 3, maximum 10 minutes of the most gentle breath work, only tapping into technique just to make sure that we are going deep enough into our bodies and nothing more. Beyond that, we did sensory work, body brushing, touching practices, awareness scans of the body. Sensory work is how the body increases its capacity to feel, map, and represent itself. But sensory work is how we increase our body's capacity to feel and see itself. If I'm a singer, I need to work with the inside of the throat, with the tongue, with the jaw, with the psoas, with the diaphragm, with the back muscles, the intercostals. Practicing sensory work is how I increase my capacity to grow in my awareness of those parts of my body. I would wager that is something that most creatives are not thinking about, how to cultivate more awareness of their own body. Certainly not thinking about if they're stuck, if they're blocked. They think that there's something wrong with them, that they're not good enough, and rather that they can just increase their capacity to become more technically proficient, to become more aware of their own body that practices their art. The other foundation of sensory work and the breathing is something that Lila said that I loved, is that the body is always asking us, the nervous system is always asking the question, am I safe? Sensory work increases our body's capacity to offer a resounding yes. I need to go do this thing. I need to put myself out there. I need to publish a new article. I need to sit on stage and sing a new song. I need to ask for advice, and that's really scary. The body's going to ask, am I safe to do that? Sensory work increases your body's capacity to immediately shoot out, yes, you're safe. Yes, you're safe. And train your body to shoot up a louder, more comforting, more grounding, more resounding, yes, you are safe. I didn't know that. That's really cool. Going deeper into movement, we focused in 4 major pillars. Pilates, classical Pilates, joint mobilization, which is something I've never done, and it blew my mind. Fascia release, which you guys, if you don't know anything about fascia, start learning immediately. I'm going to have to do a ton of videos on this. And body rolling. Lila said something critical about stuckness in the body, that anywhere there is stuckness creates this long thread of stuckness. So if you have stuckness in the chest, it's going to go all the way down to your toes, into your lungs, around your organs, behind your eyeballs. Where you feel one instance of stuckness, there is likely a long thread of stuckness. Something fascinating about joint mobilization. Fingers, wrists, ankles, hips, knees, shoulders, everything like that. All of the joints in our bodies are covered in receptors. And when those receptors can't send or receive signals, the brain automatically is programmed to interpret danger. So, if there is stuckness in your joints, you are more likely to experience resistance, anxiety, fear. We did this very powerful session where we were working on joint mobility in the feet. And I'm saying I was expecting to be going to this retreat doing hours and hours of rigorous Pilates and yoga. It was none of that. We did a simple flow of joint mobility in the feet in one session. We had a little flow at the beginning, a little flow at the end. By the time we repeated that flow at the end of the session, I had a massive release in my anxiety. I could not believe it. There was also a written component, a journaling component. We wrote and reflected on our beliefs that are held in the body, the desires that are held in our body, in our hearts, etc. Because of course we fail to appreciate how much our beliefs inform our ability to move. If you can't move, you can't create. Working deeply at the foundation of our beliefs that support our movement. We would intentionally journal before our movement because we knew that addressing our beliefs and our thoughts and the stuck emotions impacted our movement. The sessions where I noticed that my journaling was a little bit more distracted or I got off topic or something like that, I absolutely felt through Lila's cueing an impact in my movement for the day, and vice versa. The deeper that my writing flow was, the better my movement was. She was also very conscious of the progression of the week, so we worked on these different modalities every single day. But she started us on the individual. We did individual breathing, individual movement, and then later in the middle of the week, she progressed us to dyad work, so meaning that we partner with somebody. Partner exercises where we are working on movement, journaling, expression, breath, nervous system regulation, core stability, whatever it is. Doing that with a partner. Exercises where you are seen and being witnessed, and then also practicing seeing and witnessing another person stabilize themselves within the body. It's not just about co-regulation, but that co-regulation is intensified and supported when you actually witness someone intentionally endeavoring to be in their body. And from dyad work, we progressed into group work. So, for example, in the middle of the week, I'm sitting and doing breath work with a partner. And then by the end of the week, we're expanding our capacity, challenging our capacity to sit in the room with all 20 of us and practice breathing and grounding ourselves together. How many of these 20, 25 other retreat participants can I actually hold in my awareness while I actually ground myself in my own body? And can I then witness somebody and be aware of someone else grounding and being in their body? And if that is not a metaphor for performing and being an artist, I don't know what is. Perhaps the most challenging part of the movement was actually settling my ego and my mind about how easy the movement was. I'm saying little tiny movements, following the eye, moving the fascia on the chest, little tiny gestures and balance work with the feet, opening up working on joint mobility in the elbow. The most challenging part was how simple everything was. Again, Lila's philosophy, something that she said when we spoke about it after, I want people to walk away feeling connected to themselves, to their bodies, and to other people. And it's amazing how much of a player the body is in connecting to other people. So Lila's goal, not dissimilar to mine, was to get all of the retreat participants to connect to themselves in ways they never knew was possible. Exactly what I want for everyone in my community. I want you to be connected and engaged with your art, and I want it to be integrated into your life in a way that you did not think was possible. And we kind of collaborated a little bit on some takeaways, and I think that the takeaways for me were really exciting. So first one, kind of heard this throughout, but first lesson, and I've kind of echoed this already, but I want to underscore it as number one, that the body drinks in the intention to host creativity the way that we drink in water. Supporting creativity felt like, for me in my experience, my body's number one priority. That the body recognizes the creative intention naturally, and that the simplest gestures can give you instant access to the body's intelligence and wisdom towards this creativity. What I mean is that I didn't have to spend 75 years learning a lifting technique, becoming the expert that Lila is. All I had to do was do it, and my body knows that I'm not an expert. The body knows that I am an expert in opera singing and in Star Wars, and my body knows that Lila's the expert, but all my body needed was the intention and the littlest gesture, and it's like this domino effect that we are used to thinking, especially as creatives, that we have to earn and work, and that the work gets harder and harder. But what we fail to realize is that the body has a mechanism, countless mechanisms inside of it to support art and creativity to feel more like momentum, exponential growth, the big bang, that there's this domino effect. And when the body is given the right conditions, the right movement, the right community, the right safety, the right nourishment, it remembers all of these natural impulses to support your creativity almost instantly. Of course, the body remembers its own capacity to heal and to find alignment and to settle itself, to digest, to process, etc. But of course, again, that all of that movement ripples out into your creativity. And you're in the same way that if you have a really good experience meditating, you're really anxious, and then you sit for 20 minutes and you breathe, and then you're suddenly in this whole new, settled, relaxed world that you couldn't even recognize 20 minutes before. Your creativity can undergo that exact kind of magical, instant drastic transformation. So no longer are we having to wade through all of this fear and shame that we learned when we were kids. At the time, it's going to take me years to get it together. That might be true in the Matrix, but your body does not exist there. And also related to this, that the body starts doing and producing for you this domino effect, this momentum to support your creativity the minute that you stop forcing and start listening. The minute. Again, you don't have to wait 20 years, that the body turns it on. When the body feels safe, all of that stuff starts to flow. Lesson number 2, this one shocked me, that the diaphragm holds your fear of disappointment. That if you don't have some sort of process with connecting with the diaphragm, of breathing deeply, of relaxing and massaging with your breath, with manual manipulation, whatever, with an attention to your posture, to your alignment, you will be existing in a state of resisting or expecting to disappoint other people. I know a lot about the diaphragm. And again, as an opera singer, it's one of the big money makers of the singing apparatus. But still, when I was there, I had a hard time relaxing that whole apparatus. We did diaphragm work in one of the sessions, and where everyone was trying to find alignment and relax and support the diaphragm with the appropriate breathing. And what I found in me was this big tension, and Lila reflected this back to me, that she could feel that I was having a big emotional release. And what was living there is something that lives inside of all of us, which is where we hold other people's stories, disappointment, the people pleaser. And if any of us as creative people are operating with this inescapable fear of getting it wrong, of disappointing other people, it's nothing wrong with you. It's not your defect. It's not that the world is a harsh and cruel place and that your audience is going to hate you, that you're going to get flayed and splayed. Perhaps your diaphragm, this part of the body, the kind of in between the heart and third, that's where we protect ourselves. And what are we protecting ourselves from? Disappointing other people. And I had a big emotional release that it was so big that I had to take myself, I was supposed to meet the girls at lunch and at the pool. I had to go back into the studio, into the meditation studio, and I had a huge release. And I was releasing disappointment and failure and people-pleasing vibes that I had been holding on to since I was 16 years old. I felt these memories, these emotions, these expressions that were old, and I had no idea. After that, I felt this massive opening, this curiosity. Again, I came to this retreat with the intention to be creative, and so I also gave myself a lot of time to feel and express, to write, creating, etc. Instantly after this release, more curious, more creative, more daring in my expression, all because of what I released specifically in the diaphragm. Third really crazy lesson that I think creatives need to hear. The body has a capacity to help you override shame. So there's a couple things that happened. Of course, the thing that everyone knows about, when you're relaxed, your appetite changes. Everyone knows that when you're rested and you're properly nourished, you stop craving things like sugar and salt and shitty food. We also know that when you're rested, your intuitive eating cycles return, your appetite returns. One, I didn't realize that I was under eating. I didn't think it mattered that much because I'm not supermodel rail thin. So I didn't think that my under eating mattered. And so of course, like I said, I gained 5 pounds of honest weight during this retreat. 5, maybe 10 pounds of really honest weight. But here's what's shocking. I did not care. And now I'm almost 40 years old. I think, graduated from my adolescent, preteen, disordered eating mindset. But I do still get bothered and worry, and it does occupy a little bit of my mind, that the scale says this, that the jeans are a little tighter, etc., that my face is a little more plump than it was 6 months ago. But what I found is that with all of this work, that with the body operating properly, that my body was giving me the signaling, the feedback, the sense of safety that was louder, more robust than that little shame in my head about gaining 5 pounds, whatever. That the body, when properly aligned, when properly safe, all of that safety and all of that radiance that comes from eating well and from being rested and from being in proper alignment, from being emotionally released, is much louder than whatever shame is in my mind. Again, I think in part aided by the fact that the intention that I set was to be a better artist, all of that working together completely drowned out any shame or any noisiness in my head. It made it all feel much smaller. The next really strange and wonderful lesson that the body does not punish you for forgetting, that the body does not punish you for taking time. I think even when we're talking about healing the body, if there's an injury, an illness, something like that, or we have this mindset that says, okay, my sleep has been compromised, my diet has been compromised for whatever reason, and now we think that our body has to do this catching up game, that our body is that much slower, that if we're injured, that it means that we're held back. Because our minds are doing this to us, we think that our bodies are punishing us for being injured, for being undernourished, for being underrested. But in fact, the body knows that you're tired. The body knows that you forgot the proper lifting technique. The body knows that you haven't been practicing, that you haven't been writing whatever in the way that you have to for whatever reason. The body knows that. The body only exists to support you. It is only the mind that punishes you. The body will do as much as it possibly can to close the gap. That the body is a technology of God's grace. That the body sustains the grace required for living. And it's something that we always forget. But it's something that we are allowed and granted the grace to remember in an instant. And I'm just thinking, if artists knew that, I have that experience all the time as a singer, you know, like if I, as a classical musicians kind of have to practice every single day, but the way that I am, I don't practice every single day. But what I always experience is that when I jump straight back in, that I'm always surprised about how many lessons I learned. I always get this huge dose of information, of lessening, of closing the gap that seems to be disproportionate to the time that I spent away. Whatever time that you spent away, let's say you haven't been writing in 10 years, let's say you've been busy being a mother, let's say you've been busy grieving, I would wager that your body, the minute that you decide to jump back in, you would be surprised at how much your body wants to support your art. And finally, the heart, as a metaphor, as an energy system, but also as an organ, it wants to share. We started individually, then we did pairs, and then we expanded into group work. What I was telling Lila is that, you know, in my free time, there are people that I more naturally gravitated to because we have more obvious things in common. But during the working sessions, we were encouraged to pair with people that we wouldn't ordinarily socialize with. And what I found, to my shock and almost to my horror, is that my body at the start of this program was, like I said, locked. I was anxious, I was tense, I was in a little bit of a burnout. And that disposition in my body impacted who I thought I could be compatible with, who I thought I would have a connection with. But by the end of it, my heart was ravenous to connect with everybody. There was nothing about that person that wasn't familiar to me, that I couldn't recognize and see, that I didn't want to know more about. I was paired with this grandma who was telling me in the simplest of journal exercises, we were asking each other, what do you want? Simple question. And this grandma told me that she wanted chocolate. And my heart felt that simple thing and saw the universe inside of this stranger. But there was a direct correlation between how much in a stranger my heart could see, how much my heart was curious about, how much in a stranger I would be in resonance with, how deeply I can see inside of a person. And it all came from the heart, and all of that was supported by the body, that her entire progression was designed to help us get into our hearts. By the end of it, I was weeping at the beauty of every soul there. And then related to that the heart's primary desire is to share. Lila invited me to participate in the closing ceremony, and I offered a sound bath to the group, but with my own voice, which is something that I have wanted to do for about the last 10 years. She asked me, and I immediately said yes. Between you and me, saying yes immediately as a singer is not something I'm good at. There are a few singers that I know that have more stage fright than me. After all this work, I leapt at it. But a person needs to be porous in order to share, in order to support this kind of work, to support other people with their art. They have to be seen, they have to be vulnerable, they have to be very porous, and you can feel it in the body to hold and receive the projections of people's sadness, secrets, of their bad moods. That's what every artist does. The artist needs a body that is able to hold and synthesize that every day. So that's the beginning of this series, Body of Work, that creativity is not chased, it is hosted. The body is itself the host, and that it is a deeply intelligent system. The wellness industry itself has convinced us that we need all these certifications and all this time, and that we do all these screenings, and it only makes us think that we are so far away. But the body is always here to remind you that your creativity, that your health, that your wellness is right inside of you, and that all it requires is the proper inputs. In my case, in this retreat, it was the right sleep, the right food, the right movement, all of it being simple, all of it subtle, the right breath, enough sunlight, and the right relationships. And that even my capacity to understand what a healthy relationship is all supported by the body. So the body of work is going to include all types of things: theology, mysticism about the body, nervous system regulation, lots of fascia stuff as it relates to creativity and movement. As best as I can, exploring what I've learned about metabolic functions and foundations, stabilizing the hormones. I think a lot of us mistake dysregulated emotions and dysregulated hormones and the dysregulated endocrine system for creativity, and I want to talk about that. And as much as I can, pointing you to simple, accessible, durable protocols for the body that support your creativity. If you have specific interests or questions, please comment below. And Lila and all of her work, details about how to participate are also going to be included in the description. Please like and subscribe. This is my first video of this kind, so thank you for your patience and for being here.